Future stars of the NBA going head-to-head last night for the first time. Zion and Luka, you saw it late night on ESPN. Get the basketball guys in here. And they weren't the biggest stars in the house. Pat Mahomes taking in the action courtside. And let's pick it up in the first. And Richard Jefferson, look at Luka from downtown, guarded by Zion.
I talked earlier about how he reminds me more of James Harden than anybody. Probably James Harden a few years ago with those types of step backs.
And meantime, Seth Greenberg, we saw this is the first back-to-back that Zion has ever played, and he looked tired.
He looked tired. They ran a second defender at him, and he could not score over the physicality of the defense.
He's struggling.
He had 9 points, 3 boards, and 1 assist in the first half.
I think it's
but
hilarious.
He would come on in the second half. We're tied at 73. We are tied no more. Look at the power from Zion.
Yeah, when you can take 2 steps, do a spin move, and then just launch yourself from the dots and then dunk it with ease, that's special athleticism.
Mark Cuban says, whoa, what was that? That was my adaptation of what Mark Cuban said. Under a minute to go, Mavs down 1. Luka, where are you going to go for the big bucket? How about Seth Curry knocking down a big three?
Yeah, and it was, look, he had the shot, no-look pass to an open three-point shooter. That's what makes him so dangerous.
Here we go, 10 seconds to go in regulation. It's a 3-point game. Where do the Pelicans go? They go to Nicolo Melli.
Who? Right, from the first time his name's ever been said on this show.
This is his first year in the NBA from the Italian League. He sends this one to overtime in the OT. Zion checks in, less than 2 minutes to go, and he's still playing hard.
Yeah, look, he can just explode through everybody, but he didn't come in till 2 minutes ago. He had a career high last night.
He had 21 points last night, but it was Luka who got the best of him, both knocking down shots and distributing for the big fella KP. Luka with a 30-point triple-double in a huge matchup game, and the Mavs in overtime take the win.
Physically, I'm feeling fine right now. I think it was just one of those things where, Drew, Lonzo just kind of came to me and was like, are you ready to play? Because if you saw me in the second quarter, I think, I just kind of turned around and looked at Lonzo like, all right, like, I'm awake now because, they just came to me and said, like, it's time for you to wake up.
I think he's fine. We worry about him too freaking much, okay? He's fine. He's 19 years old. He'll be fine.
Well, he seems in a good mood, and it's easy to understand why, because you lose. They lose on back-to-back nights. They lose a terrible game at home against a bad Minnesota team. They lose this one in overtime. Their playoff chances slipping away, and people are asking about about Zion's minutes.
Yeah, he played the most minutes he's played all season yesterday, but he wasn't productive in those minutes. In fact, his stats were more like fantasy basketball stats. I mean, he scored, he finished around the basket. He didn't have any impact on the game. And he didn't have any impact on the game because he didn't bring energy to the game. I mean, Zion Williamson is an undersized player that has to use his quickness, his athleticism against bigger players. He couldn't finish over the physicality of this Dallas team, and he just didn't seem like he had that pop to his game that he's had earlier.
And what I love about it is that, look, he didn't have a great game, and he was 9 for 18 with 21 points. And he's still only, again, in his first game of back-to-back against very good defensive team in Dallas. And so I look at Zion and say, like, hey, there's a lot more ways for him to impact. There's a lot more ways for him to get better. I know he's only 19 his first year, but it's like we look at his numbers and they're historic and we put him in this great class. But he's had 2 double-doubles in his entire career. To me, that's a little disappointing. This man should be able to rebound with the best.
He doesn't rebound. He doesn't rebound on the defensive end. He's got more offensive rebounds than defensive rebounds. He only averages 3 defensive rebounds a game. He's got to be more engaged on that end of the floor. The reason he has these runouts is because he contests a shot. He's kind of like you back in the day. Contest a shot and go.
Okay, quickly. What about Luka? Like, Luka's team won the game. So what do you see from him? Yeah, exactly.
He's like Mariano Rivera. He was the closer at the end of that game. He's just bigger, stronger, and more physical than anyone he matches up with. He uses his size, his strength, and he gets the ball anytime, anywhere he wants it. But he does it in slow motion. Like, to me, the physicality of his game in relation to his position is ridiculous.
And again, we're going to talk about Luka. Had 17 That's how you impact the game. Game-winning assists, all of these extra plays and moves. You can't have that type of athleticism that Zion has and gives me 2 double-doubles when Luka can go out there and give you a triple-double.
Yeah, Zion is the star, but Luka was the story of the night. We are just getting started on Get Up This Wing Pleasure, an extraordinary collection of insight and analysis this morning as we are less than 2 weeks away. These two are already starting.
No.
Like, just avert your eyes from these two over here. It has
Can't help
got-
himself.
Aren't you
It is
following
got-
the news, man?
It has
What?
gotten
You can't
childish
do that.
early. Let's
Yes,
put it
but he's
that
building
way.
up an immunity. He's fine.
Roll the video. We are less than 2 weeks away from the start of NFL, a free agency, and the biggest question remains, where will Tom Brady sign? Yesterday, Brady was asked about his future by, of all people, UFC president Dana White, who is a close friend. He called into Dana White's Instagram live stream. Here's what Brady said.
I know it's been a lot of patience for me. And obviously being where I've been for 20 years, it's been an amazing experience. And I don't know what the future holds right now. I'm just trying to be patient through this process, my first time going through it. And in the meantime, I'm going to spend a lot of time with my family over the next 10, 12 days. And we got a little vacation plan, which I'm looking forward to.
So that was fascinating. I can't decide exactly why, but obviously it was. And as we turn to our insider extraordinaire, Dan Graziano, here's where it begins. I give Tom at least credit for not appearing peeved by all of the attention this is receiving. Because if he really didn't want it to get a lot of attention, he wouldn't sit courtside at a college basketball game that's being nationally televised with Jimmy Fallon, and he wouldn't be calling in to Dana White's Instagram Live. So obviously, Tom wants all of this conversation, and he is feeding it. What do we, if anything, take from that?
What we've been saying for a while is that Tom Brady wants to be a free agent and everything that comes with it, which is attention. That's part of it. He wants to be courted. He wants to go through this process. He said in that interview, this is the first time he's gone through it. So I do think he's enjoying this. Where it stands with him and the Patriots is probably, I think, where it stands with him and every other team. Waiting to get the process started, hear what they have to say, hear what the offers are, start picturing himself other places, figuring out, is that grass greener? And I just think that's where this situation has stood for a while and where it stands right now.
There was all this reporting yesterday, and Shefty in the middle of it, saying that Belichick and Brady have spoken recently, and that, I believe the phrase Shefty used was business as usual. What does that mean?
Well, what it means is that conversation didn't change anything about the situation. Tom Brady still plans to engage in free agency to the same extent that he planned to do it before that conversation with Bill Belichick. I don't believe that the Patriots are off the table as an option, but I don't believe they're the only option by any chance, by any stretch. So I think the conversation with Belichick has to happen. There will be more of them, but I think he's also at some point going to have conversations with people who run other teams.
And here's why I think that you thought it was interesting, Greenies. You'll look at this and you're listening to it. You've heard Dan talk about it, you hear me talk about it, everybody that's been on this program. That's one of the first times we've actually heard Tom Brady talk about his own pending free agency and the fact that he's going through this process. Listening to his voice comment on it, that makes it a reality. And so I think for a long time, everybody just assumed, well, he's going back to New England because that's where he's always been. But he actually addressed it where he's looking kind of forward to this, and it's going to be the first time. He's a little bit of excitement in his voice, and he's not ducking and hiding away from any of these questions.
I do have to ask just one other thing before we get to the George Kittle piece of this, and that is the notion that he's going to go off on vacation right now for 10 or 12 days with his family, which would take us right up to the period where these conversations technically and legally can begin, which is a week from Monday, is just another way of, to me, another suggestion that it would be completely naive to believe that some conversations of some sort are not already and have not already taken place.
Well, the issue with this, when we talk about it, is that it's against the rules for Brady or his agent to talk to anyone with another team until noon on Eastern time on March 16th. But somehow, when we come back from the Combine in Indianapolis last week, we tend to have an idea what the market's going to be for certain players. And obviously the players and the agents and the teams have an even better idea than those of us who are trying to get the information from them. So yes, I think there's a pretty good chance that somehow, through whatever channels, Tom Brady has an idea what his market is going to be, who's going to be interested. And I think his vacation will probably not be the most stressful one that we've ever heard.
And it's probably going to be somewhere where there's cell service or at least Wi-Fi either way, so
Probably.
maybe he could be in touch with some people. Okay, there has been a lot of talk about Brady and some of these other teams, one of them being the 49ers. I'll admit, when I first heard that, it seemed completely ridiculous to me, but it's gained some steam. So here's what happened yesterday. George Kittle, of course, the great tight end for the 49ers, posted this picture with Jimmy G and said, let's run it back 10. Dan, let's start with you.
Yeah.
Your reaction to seeing this, one of Jimmy G's favorite targets coming out in support of him staying with the 49ers.
Well, it backs up what we've heard about Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco, which is that he's very well liked in the locker room. And I don't think that moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo, if they decided to do it, would be a popular move in the locker room. So this idea of Tom Brady to the 49ers is really at this point just a matter of the 49ers deciding, is that enough of an upgrade to get them over the hump? The hump being the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl, right? I mean, which they got to with Garoppolo. So if they decide to make that move, we've discussed this before as well, the way the 49ers build their contracts, they don't owe Jimmy Garoppolo any more guaranteed money. The signing bonus was low. They put all the money in the first year because they had cap space. And Jimmy Garoppolo's contract for this year, part of it doesn't even become guaranteed until April 1st. So that allows the 49ers to go through free agency. They do that with every player. Quarterback's not an exception. So they are in position, if they wanted to switch from Garoppolo to Tom Brady, they could do it, and it wouldn't affect them financially. The question is, of course, how would it be taken in the locker room? And I think that's why you see Kittle and some other players kind of pushing back on this idea of maybe moving on from Jimmy G.
Well, he's saying run it back. Like, it wasn't like the biggest endorsement ever. Like, you're my guy no matter what.
We don't need
the future Hall of Famer. Yes, and it's a nice endorsement, but it's also a nice little hedge to make sure in case something does happen, I'm not trying to alienate a future Hall of Famer. Because I look at this, I said it last week, I think this was the trade that Bill Belichick originally wanted to make and probably wanted to keep Jimmy Garoppolo moving forward. And so the fact that Tom Brady going to San Francisco, like, I don't view that as so far out of the realm of possibility. You look at how their team is set up. They're built to win right now with the contracts of how they're set for their defensive line, for a lot of their players. They have Richard Sherman, an aging veteran. And so if they believe that he would be an upgrade even for the next 2 years only, I don't think this is a bad move for San Francisco because of what they're going to ask him to do. They're not going to ask Tom Brady to throw the ball 40 times. You keep him under 30, he's still a heck of a quarterback.
How does this thing, if indeed they do decide to go with Brady, or even if they don't, how does this generally affect a locker room? You got all these guys, they made that run last year. From everything we understand, Garoppolo is very popular in that locker room. How does this generally impact the other 53?
The amazing thing is about NFL locker rooms and really sports locker rooms in general, all these things happen outside during the offseason. Things can happen outside the locker room during the season. But when guys come in, they go to work. Once the roster's set, if this move doesn't happen, Jimmy G's going to be the guy going forward, and no one's going to be bringing up week 3 or 4 saying, gosh, I wish we would have made that trade for Tom. Like, why didn't we end up getting Tom in here? Because Jimmy's struggling. Like, that's going to be so far out of their mind that no one will think about it.
And it's not like they'd be bringing in, Jacoby Brissett. I mean, no offense, but I mean, like, there's a locker room full of guys that grew up watching Tom Brady win the Super Bowl. I think that would make the loss of Garoppolo go down a little bit.
And he grew up watching the 49ers win the Super Bowl. So there's a lot of symmetry there that is being talked about in ways that are worth paying attention to.